I was the king of composure, the unflappable host of mind meld. But on that day, an 8-year-old girl, playing for $1 million, didn't just answer a riddle. She signed a question that unearthed a 20-year-old ghost live on national television. The lights felt hotter that day. For 15 seasons of Mind Meld, the nation's top-rated quiz show, I'd stood on that same polished circle of floor, a 1,000-watt smile plastered on my face, and I thought I'd seen it all. I'd seen contestants weep with joy over a new car. I'd seen a man propose to his girlfriend in the audience after winning the grand prize, and I'd seen a history professor forget the year the Declaration of Independence was signed under the sheer brutal pressure of the clock. It was all part of the job. My job was to be the ringmaster of this polished circus of intellect and emotion, to guide the drama, but remain untouched by it. I was Steve, the unflappable host. It was my brand. But on that day, my brand, my composure, and a part of me I thought was long dead, were about to be shattered by an 8-year-old girl named Lily. Lily wasn't our typical contestant. We'd had child prodigies before, of course. Awkward 13-year-olds who could name every element on the periodic table but couldn't look you in the eye. Lily was different. She was a wild card wonder, a contestant chosen from a national competition for kids. She was tiny, with bright, inquisitive eyes, and 2 pigtails that bounced when she got excited. And she was deaf. Standing beside her podium was her father, Mark, a kind-faced man who served as her ASL interpreter. He was her voice, and she was his heart. You could see it in the way he'd watch her, his hands a blur as he translated my questions, his eyes filled with a pride that could power a small city. The whole thing felt like a feel-good segment, a heartwarming bit of television. We expected her to answer a few questions, charm the audience, and go home with a nice consolation prize and a scholarship. We did not expect her to dismantle the competition. She'd outbuzzed a Jeopardy champion on Greek mythology. She'd beaten a NASA engineer on astrophysics. She moved with a quiet, intense focus, her eyes darting between me, the big screen, and her father's hands. While the other contestants sweated and stammered, Lily was an island of calm. It was mesmerizing. And now, here she was, the last one standing, playing for the $1 million grand prize. The studio was electric. The silence was heavier than any sound. The final category was riddles and logic, a category designed to trip up people who rely on pure memorization. I looked at the card in my hand, my heart doing a strange little thump-thump against my ribs. I read the question, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Lily," I said, making sure to look right at her, a habit I'd picked up to help Mark with his interpreting. "For $1 million, what has keys but opens no locks, has space but no room, and you can enter but can't go outside?" The 30-second clock began its merciless countdown on the giant screen behind me. The audience was a sea of held breaths. I saw Lily's brow furrow. She looked at Mark, who had just finished signing the riddle. For a moment she looked lost, like any 8-year-old would. The clock ticked. 20 seconds. 15. My producer's voice was a low hum in my earpiece. "She's stumped, Steve. Get ready for the wrap-up." I started preparing my consolation speech, the one about how proud we all were. Then something shifted. A tiny spark lit up in Lily's eyes. A slow smile spread across her face. She looked at her dad, and her hands began to move, signing her answer to him. Mark watched her, a huge, relieved grin breaking out on his face. He turned to me, ready to voice her answer for the studio and the millions watching at home. But Lily reached out and gently touched his arm, stopping him. She shook her head. Then she turned her small body away from her father and faced me directly. The studio lights glinted in her wide, serious eyes. Everything else faded away. The clock, the audience, the cameras, it all dissolved into a blurry periphery. It was just me and this little girl. Her small hands, which had been fidgeting with the hem of her sparkly dress, rose with a sudden, deliberate grace. She wasn't signing to her dad anymore. She was signing directly to me. One sign, then another, slow and precise, and my blood ran cold. The 1,000-watt smile melted from my face. My breath hitched in my throat. It felt like a lightning strike to a part of my soul I had buried decades ago, a language I hadn't seen or spoken since I was a child myself. Because Lily wasn't just signing the answer to a $1,000,000 question. She was signing a question back to me, a question I hadn't heard in 20 years. Her fingers, so small and deft, formed the signs. It wasn't the answer to the riddle. It was a question, a secret handshake from a life I had walled off and buried under 2 decades of forced smiles and cue cards. My sister Chloe's question, the one she'd ask me every night before we went to sleep, her hands moving in the dim glow of her nightlight. The signs were a little different, the way a child's handwriting differs from an adult's, but the meaning hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. She was signing, "Is your star still shining?" The studio around me dissolved into a muffled roar. The ticking clock, the producer screaming in my ear, the collective gasp of the audience. It was all underwater. All I could see were Chloe's pigtails, so much like Lily's, as she pointed to the glow-in-the-dark stars we'd stuck on our bedroom ceiling. I was 10, she was 8. We were everything to each other. Our parents, loving but overworked, never learned to sign much beyond the basics. So Chloe and I built our own world, a silent, secret language woven into the fabric of ASL. "Is your star still shining?" was our way of asking. "Are you okay? Are you happy? Are you still you?" It was our promise to always look out for each other. The last time she asked me that, we were by the old quarry. I was supposed to be watching her. I turned my back for a minute, just a single stupid minute, to skim a stone across the water. When I turned back, she was gone. They said it was an accident, a slip. But all I remember is the silence, the horrible, endless silence where her laughter used to be. After that, the signs became ghosts. Her language, our language, was a constant screaming reminder of my failure. So I shut it down. I moved away, changed my name from Stevie to Steve, and built a new life out of loud noises and bright lights, a world where I was in complete control, where no silence could ever hurt me again. I hadn't signed a single word in 20 years. Steve! Steve! What's happening? My producer's voice was panicked now, cutting through the fog. The clock's at 0! We need a ruling. What did she say? I looked from Lily back to her father, Mark. His face was a mask of confusion. He obviously didn't understand the personal signs. He probably thought his daughter had just frozen under pressure and signed some nonsensical gibberish. He started to step forward to apologize, to tell me she didn't know the answer. But I saw Lily's eyes. They weren't just asking a question. They were waiting. She had seen something in me. A flicker of recognition, a crack in the mask. She knew. Somehow, this impossible little girl knew. The answer to the million-dollar riddle was on the tip of my tongue. A keyboard. It was simple. I could say it, end the segment, go to commercial, and have a full-blown panic attack in the privacy of my dressing room. That was the smart thing to do. That was what Steve the host would do. But Stevie the brother, Stevie, who had spent 20 years running from a ghost, he couldn't run any more. A single hot tear escaped and tracked a path down my cheek, a traitor to my unflappable facade. The camera zoomed in, I was sure of it, broadcasting my unraveling to 20 million people. I took a shaky breath. I ignored my producer. I ignored the gasps from the crowd. I looked at Lily, at this little girl who had unknowingly held up a mirror to the most broken part of my soul. I had a choice. Answer the show's question, or answer hers. For the first time in my adult life, I chose the truth. My hands, feeling clumsy and foreign, like tools I hadn't used in a lifetime, began to lift into the light. My fingers felt like stone, rusted shut from 2 decades of disuse. But the muscle memory was still there, buried deep beneath the scar tissue of my grief. Slowly, hesitantly, I mirrored Lily's signs, my own movements stiff and awkward. My hands trembled as I answered the question no one else in the world could have asked. My star, I signed, my knuckles aching with the effort. Fell. A long time ago, a flicker of understanding, of profound sadness, crossed the little girl's face. She knew. She understood the weight of what I'd just admitted. For a moment, we were the only two people in the universe, a broken man and a wise little girl, speaking a language of ghosts under the glare of $1 million spotlight. Then the host inside me, the professional fighting for survival, found a lifeline, the riddle. It wasn't just a riddle anymore. It was my story. My hands kept moving, the signs coming more easily now, a floodgate creaking open. I had keys, I signed, looking right at Lily, but I locked them away. My hands formed the sign for a keyboard. I had space. My hands moved to frame the air around me, but I had no room to breathe. I tapped my chest. I could enter, I signed, mimicking the act of typing on the keyboard, but I couldn't go outside of my own prison. I finished, my arms dropping to my sides, feeling utterly exposed. I had just confessed my soul on national television. Lily's father, Mark, looked completely baffled, staring from me to his daughter. He started to speak, but Lily was already signing to him, her hands a rapid-fire blur of explanation. As Mark's eyes widened in comprehension, he turned to face me, his microphone still live. "The answer," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is a keyboard." The victory bells and chimes went off, a jarring, celebratory noise in a moment that felt so sacred. The audience erupted, but their cheers were hesitant, confused by my tears. The producer was yelling in my ear to go to commercial, but I just stood there, my gaze locked on Lily. Mark held up a hand to quiet the crowd. "Please," he said, his voice cracking. "There's more." He looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. I gave a slight, shaky nod. "My wife," Mark began, addressing the studio, "grew up with a girl named Chloe. They were best friends. Chloe was deaf, and she and her older brother, Stevie, had their own secret signs. Chloe drowned when she was 8. My wife never forgot her, and she never forgot the sign Chloe taught her, their special way of checking on each other. We taught it to our daughter, Lily, so a piece of Chloe would always live on. We never knew. We had no idea what happened to her brother." He looked directly at me. "Until now." The dam broke. Sobs I hadn't allowed myself for 20 years racked my body. I wasn't Steve, the unflappable host. I was Stevie, a 10-year-old boy by a quarry, crying for his sister. The carefully constructed walls of my life crumbled into dust. The audience was silent, bearing witness to a grief 20 years in the making. And then a single person in the front row, an older woman with kind eyes, lifted her hands and began to wave them silently in the air. Then another person joined her, and another. Within seconds, the entire studio audience, the crew, even my stone-faced producer standing in the wings, had their hands in the air. They were all waving them, not clapping, not making a sound. It was a silent ovation, a visual roar of empathy and support. It was ASL for applause, a silent, shining sea of stars, all for me. They weren't cheering for a game show host. They were holding space for a grieving brother. I looked at Lily, who was beaming, her own little hands waving proudly. In that moment, she hadn't just won $1 million. She had opened a lock I thought was rusted shut forever. She had given me back my language. She had given me back my sister. She had let my star shine again.